"You don't belong here!" The words exploded across the bank lobby, sharp enough to slice through the hum of printers and the polite murmur of waiting customers. Every head turned. Fingers froze over keyboards. The air itself seemed to pause. The man shouting wasn't whispering policy. He was spitting judgment, his jaw clenched, his arms stiff, his finger stabbing the air like a gavel slamming down. And at the end of that finger stood him, a black man in a plain white t-shirt, phone pressed calmly to his ear. His eyes didn't widen, his mouth didn't flinch. He had heard this tone before at 22, when a teller refused his deposit. At 30, when a loan officer called him too risky. Decades later, the sentence had only grown louder, not smarter. Customers stirred. A woman near the counter pulled out her phone, recording in silence. Behind the desk, a manager with a polished smile, blonde hair framing her glasses, folded her arms, as if this spectacle was entertainment, not misconduct. The shouting teller leaned closer, veins tight across his forehead. "This service is for real clients. You people need to leave before I call security." The phrase hung in the air like "smoke, you people." Some looked away in discomfort, others whispered, but no one stepped in. And still, the man in the white t-shirt stood steady. He didn't raise his voice, didn't argue. Instead, he shifted his grip on the phone, and with the kind of calm that unnerves aggressors more than shouting ever could, he said quietly, "Carla, connect me now." The manager chuckled under her breath. The teller scoffed. Customers exchanged uneasy glances. To them, he looked ordinary, dressed down, maybe even out of place. No Rolex, no tailored suit. Just presence calm, anchored, immovable. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly imagine, was that this man wasn't a random walk-in. He wasn't a fraud. He wasn't a problem to be removed. He was the problem they were about to have. Because in exactly 7 minutes, this same man would own the room in a way none of them could fathom, and the finger pointing at his chest would be the same hand packing up its desk. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to him. The lobby's silence tightened as the teller barked again, louder this time, trying to reassert control. "Sir, I won't say it again, you don't belong here." But the truth, he already did, and soon everyone in that lobby was going to learn exactly how much. 7 minutes earlier, he had walked into that lobby like any other client. No entourage, no polished leather briefcase, just a plain tablet sleeve tucked under his arm and a phone in his hand. His clothes told one story: white t-shirt, dark jeans, sneakers. But his eyes told another: steady, measured, carrying the weight of boardrooms and billion-dollar contracts. He knew exactly what he was doing. The Summit Bank branch was quiet when he entered. Frosted glass walls, marble counters gleaming under fluorescent light, a space designed to whisper exclusivity. But exclusivity, in this place, had always been a gate disguised as a welcome mat. He stepped up to the desk, voice calm, professional. "I'd like to speak with the branch manager. Corporate account matter." The young teller on duty froze for half a second, then plastered on a polite smile that never touched her eyes. She glanced at his shirt, at his shoes, at his skin calculating. Then she pressed a button under the counter. A signal, not for service, for suspicion. Moments later, the manager appeared, a woman in a charcoal blazer, hair neatly styled, glasses perched like armor. She looked him over once, slow, deliberate, then gave the smallest nod to the teller beside her. That's when the script shifted. That's when the whispers began. Customers nearby pretended not to listen but leaned just a little closer. One woman adjusted her handbag. A man in line muttered under his breath. And in the corner, a teenager raised his phone discreetly, camera already rolling. The teller's tone hardened. "This area's for premium clients. If you need basic services, there's a kiosk outside." But he didn't move. He didn't even blink. Instead, he placed his ID on the counter, along with a card blacker than the granite surface beneath it. "Run my name," he said. Nothing more, nothing less. The teller didn't touch it. The manager stepped closer, lips curling into something between a smile and a sneer. "We reserve the right to refuse service." It wasn't about paperwork. It wasn't about policy. It was about perception, about who they thought deserved to stand inside this glass-lined lounge and who didn't. And that was the test. Because he hadn't come here in a t-shirt by accident. He hadn't left the Rolex at home because he forgot. He dressed down because he knew what would happen. He wanted to see if anything had changed in 20 years. It hadn't. His phone buzzed faintly in his hand. Carla was already on standby, waiting for his signal. One word from him, and the quiet prejudice simmering in this lobby would be logged, time-stamped, escalated beyond the reach of anyone behind that counter. But for now, he waited, silent, anchored, letting them dig their own grave with every word. The silence cracked first. The teller leaned closer, voice sharp, words cutting through the hum of printers and the polite coughs of waiting customers. "Sir, I'm asking you to step aside. This area isn't open to walk-ins." His ID still sat on the counter, untouched. His card, black and heavy with authority, gleamed beneath the fluorescent lights like a challenge. The manager didn't glance at it. She crossed her arms, chin tilted, her posture saying what her lips soon confirmed. "Security will be here in a minute. Best to avoid trouble and leave now." Eyes shifted in the lobby. A middle-aged man in a navy suit frowned but said nothing. A mother with a toddler pulled her child closer. Phones hovered at chest height, subtle but rising, as if the truth was begging to be captured. The man in the white t-shirt didn't budge. His phone stayed pressed to his palm, not raised, not recording, just waiting. His calm unsettled them more than defiance ever could. The teller's tone grew mocking. "You people think flashing a card makes you special? Doesn't work here." The words rippled through the room like spilled ink. A gasp slipped from the teenager recording in the corner. The manager's smirk widened. She whispered something to the teller, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Keep him talking. He'll slip up." But it wasn't him unraveling. It was them. Another staff member, younger, hesitated from the side office. His eyes darted between the counter and the growing audience. His lips parted as if to speak, then shut tight again. Not yet. Not brave enough. The man adjusted his stance, shoulders square, breathing steady. He had faced boardrooms stacked against him, regulators waiting to shut him down, competitors betting on his failure. This was no different. Just another room, another test. The manager tapped her pen against the desk, voice louder now, performative. "Sir, you're wasting our time. Clients with real accounts need attention. Step back." The room bristled. A customer whispered, "He already showed ID." Another hissed, "This is ugly." Still, no one intervened. Not yet. The teller's patience snapped. He slapped the ID back toward him, the card clattering against the polished surface. "This isn't proof. We've seen fakes before. Security will deal with you." The noise carried. Too loud to be mistaken for professionalism, too deliberate to be called procedure. He didn't flinch. His phone buzzed again in his hand. Carla's voice, faint, filtered through his AirPods. "Ready on your signal." But he wasn't ready. Not yet. He wanted them to show every crack, every prejudice, every word they thought no one was listening to. And the truth was, they weren't just being heard. They were being recorded, logged, witnessed, every syllable, every sneer. The escalation wasn't his doing, it was theirs. And they had no idea how close they already were to the edge. He could have argued. He could have raised his voice, demanded dignity, demanded service. But instead, he did nothing. His silence landed harder than any rebuttal. He simply straightened the papers the teller had shoved back, slid his card into the center of the counter, and rested his hand lightly on top as if anchoring the room itself. The lobby hummed with discomfort. Whispers fluttered like moths in the corners. The teenager's phone camera caught every detail, the teller's red face, the manager's folded arms, the contrast between fury and composure. "Sir," the teller snapped, "ignoring me won't help you. Security is on the way." Still, no reaction. Just a calm breath, measured and deliberate. He adjusted the strap of his tablet sleeve and let the silence stretch. The longer he said nothing, the more desperate they became to fill the void. The manager leaned in, voice dripping with condescension. "You think standing there makes you brave? It makes you a liability. Our clients don't feel safe." The word safe slithered through the air, a blade disguised as concern. Several customers shifted uncomfortably. A woman near the front muttered, "Safe from what? He hasn't done anything." But the staff didn't hear it, or chose not to. They were too busy talking themselves deeper into the hole his silence had carved open. He glanced at the clock above the exit doors. 10:12 a.m. He had walked in 7 minutes earlier. 7 minutes was all it usually took, either for professionalism to prevail or prejudice to expose itself. Carla's voice brushed against his ear again, quiet, steady. "Do you want me to escalate now?" He whispered back, low enough that no one else could hear. "Not yet. Let them show more." The teller slammed a drawer shut, the noise echoing like a gavel. "Sir, you're non-compliant. This will go in the record." That word record almost made him smile. Because if they only knew how much was being recorded right now, not just by the teenager's phone, but by corporate servers syncing live every second, they might have thought twice. Instead, they pushed harder. The manager tapped her nails on the counter. "Last warning. Leave or you'll be escorted out." He met her gaze for the first time. Calm, unflinching. And with nothing more than that look, the balance shifted. Customers sensed it. Phones tilted higher. A murmur rolled through the crowd. He still hadn't spoken. He didn't need to. His silence was a mirror, forcing them to listen to the ugliness of their own voices. And in that silence, something began to change. Not in the staff, they were too far gone. But in the witnesses, the room was no longer neutral. It was choosing sides. It started with a sound barely more than a whisper. He already showed his ID. The voice came from the back, a man in a gray hoodie waiting to deposit a check. Heads turned toward him, then back to the counter. The teller's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Then another shift. A woman with a stroller near the exit whispered to her friend, "Why are they treating him like that? He hasn't even raised his voice." Her friend nodded, phone tilted low, camera blinking red. The teenager in the corner finally lifted his phone high, no longer hiding. His lens framed everything, the manager's crossed arms, the teller's pointed finger, the black man at the center standing calm, silent, unshaken. The manager hissed, "Stop recording. This is private property." But her command came too late. A middle-aged man in a tailored suit raised his voice from the waiting chairs. "No, it isn't. This is a bank. Customers have a right to document." Murmurs swelled. The lobby was no longer an audience of bystanders, it was shifting into a chorus. Each phone that lifted became a witness. Each whispered protest became a record. The teller tried to regain control. "People, please, he's wasting everyone's time, there are rules." A young employee from behind the counter cut in, voice unsteady but clear. "I saw his name in the system. The account's real." The room stilled. The manager snapped her head toward him, eyes sharp enough to cut. "Out. Now." The junior employee froze, face pale, then shrank back, but the damage was done. Someone inside had spoken. Someone who knew. The black man still hadn't said a word. He simply shifted his phone to his other hand, gaze calm, steady, and it was enough. "Unbelievable," muttered the man in the suit, louder this time. "He hands you ID and a card, and you treat him like a criminal?" The teller's voice cracked under the weight of rising protest. "This is procedure. We follow protocol." But no one was convinced anymore. Not the teenager recording from two angles, not the mother with the stroller whispering into her camera, not the businessman now standing, shaking his head. The lobby was becoming something the staff hadn't prepared for, a room full of witnesses who weren't going to stay silent. And the irony? Every second they tried to bury him, they buried themselves deeper. The room was no longer quiet. Phones glowed like tiny red eyes, recording every second. Customers whispered louder now, no longer hiding their disbelief. But the staff? They doubled down. The manager stepped forward, heels striking the marble like a warning. Her smile was thin, practiced, brittle. "Enough of this circus, sir. You are not a verified client. We don't need to waste time proving otherwise." The teller smirked, emboldened. "Look at him. No account could possibly match what he's flashing. It's a scam, obvious." The businessman near the waiting chairs barked back. "He showed you ID. He gave you a corporate card. You're the ones refusing to look." The manager's voice sharpened, volume rising as though noise could replace evidence. "We've seen this pattern before. People come in with forged credentials, hoping we'll slip. Not today." The teenager's camera caught every syllable, every sneer. He whispered into the mic, "This is going viral." The black man still didn't move. His silence was unbearable for them, like standing in front of a mirror reflecting their own contempt. And so, they filled the silence with more venom. "You don't dress like a premium client," the teller scoffed. "Real account holders don't come in here looking like—" He cut himself off, but the word hung in the air anyway. The implication was enough. A woman in line gasped. Another muttered, Did he really just say that? The manager turned, addressing the room as if the audience was hers to command. This man is trespassing. He's disrupting business. Security will escort him out, and that's final. But the cracks showed. Her voice trembled at the edges. Her eyes darted to the cameras, to the witnesses who were no longer passive. A young mother called out from the side, firm and clear. He hasn't disrupted anything. You did. The teller slammed his palm against the counter, startling the room. This ends now. He leaves or we call the police. The threat dropped heavy. A man by the door muttered, "For what?" Standing here. The black man finally lifted his gaze, calm, measured. He didn't speak, but he didn't need to. His eyes held theirs long enough to make the silence louder than the shouting. Behind him, the teenager whispered again to his phone, voice shaky but resolute. They just threatened to call the cops on a man who hasn't said a single word. The lobby was no longer just a lobby. It was a stage. Every line, every gesture, every slur was evidence. And the staff didn't realize they were writing their own downfall in real time. The teller's patience snapped like a brittle branch. With a sudden shove, he knocked the black card off the counter. It skidded across the marble floor, landing at the feet of the mother with the stroller. The clatter echoed louder than any insult. Gasps rippled through the lobby. "Did he just?" someone whispered. The teenager's phone tilted sharply to catch the moment. The manager didn't flinch. She leaned in closer, voice dripping with disdain. "You see, this is what happens when we let anyone walk in. Flashy fake cards, made-up names. It ends today." The businessman stood, fists clenched at his sides. "That's theft. You can't just throw someone's property like garbage." But the teller doubled down, eyes narrow, voice loud enough to fill the entire room. "He's a fraud. Probably stole the identity. You all saw it. He won't even defend himself. Because he can't." "Oh." The teenager's voice shook as he narrated into his camera. "He's literally standing there calm and they're calling him a thief." The black man's silence held. His hands stayed at his sides, steady as stone. He wasn't going to give them the outburst they wanted. The manager snapped her fingers at a guard who had just entered through the side door. "Escort him outside. He's disrupting the branch." The guard hesitated. His eyes flicked toward the phones, toward the witnesses, toward the growing tension that was no longer private but public, documented, undeniable. "Ma'am," he started, voice low. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she barked. "Remove him now, before he embarrasses this institution any further." The irony didn't land on her, but it landed on everyone else. A woman in line raised her phone higher, voice trembling with outrage. "He hasn't embarrassed the bank, you have." "Oh." The teller sneered, stepping around the counter now, his posture aggressive. "You heard her. Move, or we'll have you charged with trespassing." The word trespassing stung. It wasn't just a denial of service, it was an erasure, an attempt to rewrite his presence as criminal. The businessman's voice cut through the noise. "He has every right to be here. You're humiliating yourselves." But humiliation wasn't enough for them. They wanted removal. They wanted erasure. The guard finally reached forward, hand brushing against the man's sleeve. Phones tilted higher. Customers murmured, horrified. The teenager whispered into his mic, "They're about to drag him out." And that was the moment the red line crossed, because the second that hand touched his arm, the silence broke. Not with anger, not with shouting, but with precision. He lifted his phone, pressed a single button, and spoke calmly, clearly. "Carla, initiate Protocol 6. Log everything." Effective immediately. The guard froze. The manager blinked. The teller's smirk faltered. The tide had just turned, and none of them saw it coming. The word protocol landed heavier than the shove, heavier than the slurs. It silenced the room. The black man lifted his phone slightly, not as a weapon, but as a command post. His voice never rose above calm. "Carla, log every phrase, every accusation. Timestamp the moment security laid a hand on me." "Oh." On the other end, her response was crisp, audible enough to carry. "Logged. Video feed synced. Corporate compliance is watching live." The teller blinked. Who are you talking to?" The manager forced a laugh, brittle, high-pitched. "Some imaginary assistant? Stop stalling. Remove him." But the guard's grip loosened. His eyes darted between the glowing phones, the hushed witnesses, and the man who radiated calm power in the middle of chaos. Something wasn't adding up. The black man didn't look at him. His eyes stayed fixed on the manager. "Carla, open a compliance review on this branch." Flag today's incident for corporate ethics. Confirmed, came the reply. Initiating escalation chain. Murmurs spread like wildfire. A customer near the door whispered, "He's connected. This isn't random." The businessman stepped closer, his voice louder now. "You hear that? He's not bluffing. You're in trouble." The manager's smirk faltered, then hardened again. "You think calling some hotline changes anything? This is my branch." Finally, he spoke directly to her, his first real words to the room. "Number. This is my branch, and right now you're digging the hole you'll be buried in." Gasps rippled across the lobby. The teenager's phone shook slightly as he whispered into the mic, "He said it. My branch." The manager flushed, snapping back. "Delusional. You're nothing but a con artist. Security, do your job." But the guard didn't move. His jaw tightened. His radio stayed at his side. The black man lowered his phone slightly, calm as ever. "Carla, freeze managerial access for this location. Effective immediately." A pause. Then, access revoked. Managerial logins locked. Confirmation ping sent. The manager's computer behind the counter chimed, screen flashing red. Her eyes widened as the denial code repeated across the monitor. What did you just do?" she stammered. He stepped forward once, not aggressive, just steady. "I told you to run my name. You chose to run your mouth instead." The witnesses erupted gasps, murmurs, phones raised higher. The tide had shifted. The man they tried to erase was writing their ending in real time, and he hadn't raised his voice once. The manager's fingers jabbed at her keyboard, desperate to override the lockout. Each tap returned the same message. A CSS denied. The glow of failure lit up her glasses. "You, what did you do? Who gave you permission?" Her voice cracked, louder now, shaky beneath the veneer of control. The black man finally lifted his eyes to the entire room. His words came measured, steady, precise. "You wanted proof of who I am. Here at Island." He reached into his sleeve, pulled out a slim wallet, and placed a single card on the counter. No flash, no flourish. Just a matte black corporate badge with one embossed line. Chief Executive Officer, Summit Holdings. The crowd surged with gasps. The businessman muttered, "I knew it." The teenager whispered, "Oh my God," into his phone, the recording trembling. Even the guard stepped back, lips parted. The teller shook his head in denial, voice breaking. No, that's not real. It can't be." The man's gaze fixed on him, calm as ever. "You called me a fraud in the bank I own." The words detonated in the lobby like a verdict. People actually clapped, scattered at first, then louder. Phones tilted higher, capturing the collapse of arrogance in real time. The manager staggered a step back, color draining from her face. "You own?" "Not just own," he corrected quietly. "I oversee. I fund. I sign the checks that cover your salary." He leaned in just slightly, voice a whisper sharp enough to slice. "And today I watched how you treat people when you think no one's watching." The teenager's live stream ticked upward, hundreds of viewers, then thousands. Comments flooded the screen. "Exposed. This is history. Silent power." The guard dropped his hand from his radio, taking a step away. "Sir," he said carefully, I didn't know." The CEO nodded once. "You weren't the problem, but you were about to become part of it. Don't." The manager's lips trembled. She turned to the teller, whispering harshly, "Say something, fix this." But the teller's face had gone pale, his bravado drained. He couldn't speak. He only stared at the badge that confirmed the impossible. The man they tried to erase was the man who held their futures. The CEO picked up his phone once more. "Carla, log the reveal, and prepare termination notices for senior staff at this branch." "Confirmed," Carla's voice replied, steady, clinical. The room shifted again, not just shock, not just awe, but justice settling into place. Witnesses felt it. Phones captured it. And the staff realized there was no undoing what they'd unleashed. For years, they had judged faces, clothing, tone. Today, judgment returned. And it came wearing a plain white t-shirt. The badge sat on the counter like a silent verdict. The teller stared at it as though it might burn through the marble. His lips parted, but no sound came out. The manager's hands trembled against her blazer, knuckles white as she gripped her lapel like it could hold her authority together. Around them, the lobby erupted not in chaos, but in recognition. Customers whispered, gasped, shook their heads. The businessman in the navy suit muttered, "I told you," while the teenager shouted into his live stream, "He's the CEO. They called the CEO a fraud." The comment feed scrolled so fast it blurred, "Fire them. Justice in real time. This is history." The guard dropped his stance entirely, stepping back as though proximity itself was dangerous. His radio dangled at his side, forgotten. The teller finally croaked, his voice stripped of arrogance. "Sir, I didn't know." The CEO's gaze held him steady, calm, unforgiving. "You didn't want to know. You wanted to assume." The manager stepped in, her voice cracking. "Please, there's been a misunderstanding. We thought—" "You thought my presence was an error," he cut in, his tone precise as glass. "You thought my skin, my clothes, my silence made me less. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was a choice." Gasps swept the lobby again. The teenager zoomed his camera tighter. The live stream counter ticked into 5 digits. The manager's composure shattered. She turned to her staff, desperate. "Say something. Back me up. Tell them this was policy." But the younger employee, the one who had whispered earlier that the account was real, finally found his courage. His voice shook, but his words landed like a hammer. "It wasn't policy, it was you." Ugh. The crowd erupted murmurs, applause, phones thrust higher. The woman with the stroller nodded, fierce and certain. "He's right. We all saw it. You tried to erase him." The teller's face drained. His bravado dissolved into panic. I was just following orders." "No," the CEO said evenly, his eyes cutting through him. "You were following prejudice. Orders just gave you cover." The manager's knees nearly buckled. She turned back to the CEO, voice pleading now. "Sir, if we could start over." But her words drowned under the sound of Carla's voice piping through his phone, projected just enough for the lobby to hear. "Compliance escalation confirmed. HR will arrive within the hour. Managerial staff locked out of systems." The manager's tablet buzzed, her screen flashing red with every attempt to log in. The teller's workstation froze, access revoked. Their authority evaporated in front of every witness. The businessman crossed his arms, almost satisfied. "Looks like the branch just lost its staff." Phones recorded it all. The panic, the collapse, the undeniable truth. What had begun as humiliation for one man had turned into public downfall for those who tried to erase him. And the CEO hadn't raised his voice once. The branch no longer belonged to its manager. The authority she once carried in her blazer, in her tone, in the tilt of her chin, it was gone, ripped from her like a badge stripped in disgrace. The CEO stood still at the counter, phone in hand, his voice low but final. "Carla, effective immediately. Terminate the branch manager and senior teller. Lock credentials permanently. Escort notices will follow." The line clicked as Carla responded with clinical precision. "Confirmed. Access terminated. HR en route within 30 minutes. The manager's tablet beeped again, her login blinking invalid. The teller's workstation went black, cursor frozen mid-blink. Their eyes widened in unison, the color drained from their faces. "No, please," the manager's voice cracked, desperate. "We've served this bank for years. We can fix this." The CEO didn't waver. "You don't fix prejudice, you end it." The businessman in the navy suit clapped once, loud, decisive. Others joined, applause swelling through the lobby like a tide. Phones captured every second. Cameras locked on the fall of those who had believed they held power. The teller reached across the counter, trembling. "Sir, just give me another chance. I didn't mean—" The CEO's gaze cut him off, sharp and steady. "You meant every word. You meant every gesture. And now you mean nothing here." The guard stepped back further, almost relieved. He murmured, "They're finished," under his breath. The younger employee, the one who had dared to speak, watched wide-eyed, chest rising with equal parts fear and awe. The CEO's eyes softened just enough to acknowledge him. "You spoke when silence was easier. Remember that. It matters." The manager stumbled, clutching at the counter. "This isn't fair." The CEO leaned forward just slightly, his voice slicing through the noise. "Fair would have been serving me like any other client. This," he gestured to the frozen screens, to the witnesses, to the dozens of cameras recording, "this is justice." The teenager whispered into his live stream, voice trembling with excitement. "They're done." He just fired them. On the spot. The viewer count ticked into 6 digits. Comments exploded. Accountability. Silent power. History made today. The manager's last shred of composure collapsed. She turned toward the door, but the sound of her badge, buzzing red at the exit, sealed it locked out, exiled from the very place she once ruled. The teller followed, pale and shaking, chased not by security but by the sound of applause echoing through the marble lobby. The CEO exhaled once, calm and final. The verdict was delivered. The punishment was complete. And still he hadn't raised his voice. Not once. The lobby was no longer tense. It was charged alive with the weight of what had just unfolded. Phones still hovered in the air, but the tone had shifted. Where there had been gasps and whispers, now there was applause, clapping that rolled like thunder against marble and glass. The manager and teller pushed through the doors, badges buzzing red, shut out from the place they once commanded. Each step away felt like an exclamation mark at the end of their downfall. The crowd didn't cheer their exit, they documented it, recorded every second, immortalized it online. The CEO remained at the counter, his phone still in hand, calm, centered, unshaken. He didn't bask in the applause. He didn't smirk at their ruin. He simply stood there, steady as stone, while the room recalibrated around the truth. The guard cleared his throat, voice careful, deferential now. "Sir, do you want me to close the lobby?" The CEO shook his head. "Number, leave it open. Let people see what accountability looks like." A murmur of agreement rippled through the customers. The businessman in the navy suit stepped closer, offering a respectful nod. "You handled that with more dignity than most of us could have managed." The CEO's gaze met his, calm but unyielding. Dignity isn't optional. It's the standard. And today they failed it. The teenager's live stream chat exploded with praise, disbelief, and fury. Messages scrolled faster than his camera could capture. "This is what justice looks like." He didn't even yell. "I'll never forget this." The young mother with the stroller raised her voice just enough to carry. "My son just watched you stand there and prove them wrong without shouting once. He'll remember that." For a moment, the CEO's eyes softened, just a fraction. Then he turned back to the counter, collected his badge and ID, and slipped them back into his sleeve. Every move was deliberate, every gesture measured. He looked once more at the frozen workstations, screens still locked in red denial. "This isn't just about me," he said, voice low but carrying. "This is about every person who's been told they don't belong, every person who's been asked to prove themselves twice, while others walk through unchecked." The room fell silent again, not with hostility, but with respect. Every word carried weight, pressed into the air like an imprint no one would forget. He stepped toward the exit, but before leaving, he paused. His eyes swept across the crowd, witnesses, allies, recorders. His final words cut through the charged silence like a blade through glass. "You said I didn't belong. Now I say you're dismissed." Gasps. Applause. Some even cheered. The doors opened for him, not as an exit, but as a stage curtain closing on a performance no one could erase. Outside, sunlight hit his shoulders as he stepped onto the street. The noise of the city swallowed the lobby's echo, but the videos inside were already spreading millions of eyes waiting to see what happened when silence met arrogance and won. He walked away without looking back. He didn't need to. The statement had been made. The punishment had been carried out. And the truth captured on every phone, uploaded across every platform, was unstoppable. Because justice didn't need shouting. It needed presence. It needed power. It needed him. And in that moment, every person in that lobby understood. He wasn't just a client. He wasn't just a man. He was the CEO. The story didn't end when he left. It had only begun.